everyone, this is Larissa from the Happy Keeper, and this YouTube video is about getting stung. About why bees sting, how to avoid getting stung as just a person out about, as a beekeeper, and what to do when you are stung. I have a few tips that I've learned over the years to avoid swelling up too much and to avoid all of that itchiness that you get for days later. And if you have other ideas, post them in the comments because I would love to hear your tips too. There are a ton of ways to alleviate a bee sting. So first of all, we need to know why bees sting, because that's the best way to avoid it. Bees usually sting for two reasons. One is to defend themselves if they think their life is in danger, and the second is to defend their hive. So if you are out say at a picnic or maybe just at the beach or something and a bee is around you, that bee is a forager bee, because the bees, when they first hatch, first half of their life, they stay in the hive and they don't leave the hive. They are feeding the babies and making comb and secreting beeswax. They're not out of the hive. But once they are older, they leave the hive and they go in search of food, nectar and pollen, sometimes water if needed because it's really hot out. And so that forager bee is very busy. She's got an important task to feed the hive, and that's what she's doing. So if she's coming around you, most likely it's because you smell good or you have something that smells good near you that she's interested in. The best thing to do is to stay calm and to let her do her thing and fly off. The worst thing to do is to overreact, which is usually the case in almost every situation in life, in my experience. So what you want to do is just leave her alone. Do not swat, do not run, don't get all stressed out, because that heavy breathing that you're going to do is actually going to send an alarm out to the bee and get her upset as well. If she gets close to your face, you could cover your face, especially your eyes, nose, and mouth. Those are the dark spots, the sensitive spots, and they're kind of spots that bees are kind of programmed to know are your sensitive spots. So you can cover them if you're concerned that she might get close to you and sting those areas, just like that. And you can also go up to 50 feet away and go into a shady spot or tall grass, and that is usually enough, unless you're in a place with Africanized bees. If you don't have Africanized bees in your area because you live in a place, which is the majority of the United States, where it gets cold out, you're not going to have Africanized bees. Also, we don't have them here in Hawaii either. Then you don't have to worry about bees being overly aggressive. All you have to worry about is getting out of her way. And also, don't forget that this bee will die if she stings you. So obviously, it's not her goal to die today. Her goal is to work and to bring food to the hive. So if you usually leave her alone, she will leave you alone. The second reason why bees sting is to defend the hive. And so this is more so for the beekeeper. When you are out opening the hive, there's a chance you're going to get stung, mostly by guard bees. The guard bee's job is to guard the hive from intruders, which could be a human or a bear or other bees, wasps. So a whole bunch of things want to steal honey and baby bees. And so as a beekeeper, there are a few things you can do to prevent upsetting your bees and to keep the amount of stings you get down to a minimum. One thing to do is to open the hive during hours when a lot of the bees are out of the hive, especially those foragers. So that's between 10 a.m. and 2 or 3 p.m., you know, when it's warm out, the sun is up, and bees are out at the flowers. The other thing you really want to do, which is very important, is to keep the strong smells to a minimum, especially on your body. So that means strong smelling soap, shampoos, conditioners, lotions, perfumes, anything else you might be putting on your body. You don't want to smell like Bath and Body Works when you go to open a beehive. And as well as other strong smells that might be in the area. I had a student that had her hive take off and she didn't know why, but her theory was that they grabbed mulch from the dump and it smelled pretty bad, and she thinks that that smell is what caused them to take off. And I agree, that's probably a really good reason for bees to leave, is it stinks by their home constantly. So when bees are agitated, they are more likely to sting, which brings me to my next point. You want to keep your bees happy. Happy bees are a lot less likely to sting than unhappy bees. To keep your bees happy, an important thing to do is to keep your mite levels low. When mite levels are high, viruses are high, the hive is not healthy, and therefore they can get very aggressive. And this is normally the #1 reason why a hive becomes aggressive for me over the years. And one way you can, well, the way to tell how high your mite level is by doing a mite test. You just grab a canning jar, put a half a cup of bees in there, along with rubbing alcohol, and say 2/3 of the jar is full of rubbing alcohol, and then you put a screen over it and empty it into a bowl with a paper towel on top. In short, that's how you do it, and there are lots of places you can go to learn how to do a mite test. We teach how to do this in our online beekeeping class, and it's super fast and super cheap. You don't have to buy any fancy equipment. Just go to like a Walmart or Target or something to get the stuff you need for like $5, and you can do a mite test, and that will tell you your mite levels. If your mite level is, you get a count of like over 7, then you have a mite infestation, and that's a good reason why your hive is aggressive. Another big reason why bees get aggressive is because they're getting ready to swarm. And just like me and my sister, when we were home for days at a time, say because it snowed out or for whatever reason we were all cooped up together, we got on each other's nerves. Bees also get kind of cranky when they are all cooped up in a hive and it's overly crowded, which is when they begin swarming. So prevent swarming by putting lots of space into especially your brood boxes. And we explain how to do this in a few videos, as well as our beekeeping class. You can watch our last video posted about COVID and preventing swarming to see how we prevent swarming, or you can just put a slatted rack under your first brood box. Another reason why bees get aggressive, which you can't do anything about, but it doesn't last long, is when a big nectar season ends. They can get a little upset when they deal with that downtime between a big nectar flow and not so much nectar coming in. And that's just something to keep in mind when opening the hive. So tools we have for dealing with bees when they get aggressive, because you still have to open a hive, you still have to harvest honey, you still have to do things that can make bees upset. So we have a smoker, and that's this thing right here. And when you use smoke in the beehive, there are 2 things that you can use it for. One is you can lightly smoke areas when you need to put your hands there in the beehive. That gets the bees out of the way so that you can pull a frame out without squishing a bunch of bees. But the other thing a smoker does is it can mask alarm pheromones. And so when that guard bee is alarmed by what you're doing, she releases that pheromone. She's going to get other worker bees alarmed, and they're going to help her deal with the situation, which is essentially you. So when you put a lot of smoke in the area, you're masking that pheromone and you're preventing a whole bunch of bees from being alarmed. Now, you want to prevent this not just for the sake of you not getting stung, but so that you don't disturb the whole hive. All these bees are stopping what they're doing to go deal with this problem, and essentially you don't want them to think that there is a problem. Not only are you slowing down production, but now they're relating you opening a beehive with a problem and an alarm. And bees remember things and they can make out faces, so you really want to keep that alarm pheromone and all of that havoc down to a minimum. It can also actually lead to a hive balling their queen if that pheromone is really being released for a while and the hive is really upset. So if you're doing anything to cause your bees to be very agitated, say harvesting honey or having it open for a long time or moving the bees, then you want to use a lot of smoke. That masks the alarm pheromone. It also can simulate a forest fire. When the bees think that there's a fire coming, they're going to gorge themselves on honey. And when they do that, it's really hard for them to curl up into a C shape to sting you. Which is another reason why bees are also, it's very uncommon for bees to sting you in a swarm, because they are also gorged on honey at that time and have difficulty being able to curl up in that C shape and sting you. I want to mention that when I first got started, I was actually very nervous about getting stung by bees. I had read that when you are stung once, the bees can smell that pheromone where the stinger was, and you're more likely to get stung a whole bunch more in that same spot. And even though there is a little bit of truth to that, you really don't have to be like alarmed by it. Just because you're stung once doesn't mean that like 15 bees are going to jump on that spot and sting you as well. So don't be too scared if you're thinking about beekeeping or just getting started and you're terrified about getting stung. It's really not that bad. It only hurts for a few minutes, and a whole bunch of other bees are not going to jump on top of you and sting you as well. However, you can smoke that spot with your smoker if you are afraid that other bees are going to try to sting you where you were just stung. That being said, there is safety gear to protect us. You can have a veil to protect your face from getting stung. You can have the jacket, or you can have the full suit. Now, if you're concerned about getting stung, or if you swell pretty badly, then I recommend the suit, because bees can easily get up inside the veil where it's tied down. And if you have a jacket, when you bend over, it's common for bees to get up inside the jacket in your lower back where the jacket ends and meets your pants. When you have a suit, it's a lot harder for bees to get anywhere. And if you really want to keep them out, then you can get clips to tie up the ankles so that bees can't go up your pant leg, which actually kind of happens to me fairly often. So there also are the same kind of clips you would wear if you rode a bicycle and wanted to prevent your pant leg from getting caught up in your bicycle chain. Another thing to keep in mind is that you just want to move slowly. You want to avoid dropping things. You don't want to use a bee brush if possible, because that really gets bees upset, and you want to not give bees a reason to be alarmed and to immediately get upset every time you take the lid off of a hive. Be gentle and understand that it's pretty easy to squish a bee. Alright, so you've been stung by a bee. Now what do? Well, most importantly, you want to get the stinger out. And you do not want to pinch the area and try to get it out the way you would a splinter. You want to scratch it out. If you pinch it, that little pale yellow sac at the end of the stinger, which is the venom sac, is going to pump venom into your body even faster than if you did nothing at all. So pretend like this black dot is a stinger, because I'm not going to sting myself with a bee and cause a bee to die just for demonstration purposes. You were stung, you want to take your fingernail and scratch the area in the opposite direction the stinger went in. It'll seem pretty obvious when you look at it. It'll be at an angle, say that way, so you want to scratch out that way. If you don't have a fingernail long enough to be able to do this, you can use a credit card or any hard, flat surface, like a metal ruler, say. But, I mean, why wouldn't you have a credit card? Gift cards, all of those things work well. And it's important to do this as fast as possible. And this is the key for beekeepers to not swell up so badly when getting stung, is that they get really good at getting stingers out fast. If you get a stinger out within 30 seconds, there's a good chance that the venom sac didn't have a chance to really pump much venom into your bloodstream. The longer you give that venom sac, the more venom it's going to be able to pump into your bloodstream. I mean, there's not like an infinite amount of venom it has in there, but get it out as fast as possible. If it's on your face and you can't see, then ask somebody or find a mirror. But I found that you can just scratch the area and it usually comes out, and I see it on my finger pretty quickly without having to see what I'm doing. Okay, so now you want to do something to alleviate that burning, stinging, and the swelling and itchy that's going to come afterwards, which in my opinion is the worst part. So there are a bunch of ways you can do this, and there are a bunch of things that neutralize that venom. What I found works really well is to grab plantain weed. It looks like this. You can look it up on Google if you want. They grow these tall, skinny shoots with flowers on them, and you'll find them in most lawns. And what you want to do is just rip it up into teeny little pieces and squish it until you get the sap out. And you want to put that on the area where you were stung. You can use a mortar and pestle. You can chew it up to try to get it out. Just if you're going to put it in your mouth, make sure you know that it's fairly clean. Here in Hawaii we have that red lungworm disease, so you don't really want to put stuff that hasn't been washed in your mouth, or if it was sprayed by pesticide or herbicide, don't put that straight in your mouth. But after you've squished it enough and ripped it up, you're essentially making a poultice, and you're going to put it on the area where you were stung, and then you can put bandaging around it to keep it there. There are other ways that you can alleviate this venom, and that is you can make a paste with baking soda and water. You can make a paste with turmeric and water. There is bentonite clay you can put on it. Those things are nice because once you make the paste, it hardens up and stays on your skin, which makes it easier, especially if it's like on your face or something. Other things that beekeepers have recommended is to use toothpaste with bicarbonate in it, or to put a copper penny, that the darker ones, on the area. That helps to neutralize the venom, or tea tree oil, and just a teeny little bit. And then just keep on adding it every so many hours once you notice that it's dried up or it still is burning and bothering you. And to deal with the itchiness and the swelling, I found that ice works well, and if it's super swollen you can use Benadryl, but I wouldn't recommend doing that unless it's really swollen badly. If you're finding that your beehive is super aggressive all the time, no matter the weather, no matter their mite counts or anything, then most likely it is their genetics. And if you live in an area where there are Africanized bees, it's possible that your hive is Africanized, or that the genetics are just for some more aggressive bees. And the only way to get rid of an aggressive hive like that is to pinch the queen and introduce a new one. This will not work for an Africanized hive. If you have an Africanized hive, you cannot pinch the queen and introduce a European queen. They will make their own queen and get rid of the European queen, so don't waste your money or that poor queen bee's life. However, if you have some kind of European queen in your hive and she just has more aggressive genetics, you can pinch her and introduce a new queen, and make sure that your hive doesn't accept create their own queen from the old queen's genetics. If you just pinch your queen and let your hive make their own queen, you're still going to have a good amount of the genetics from the aggressive hive, and that defeats the purpose to pinching the queen in the first place. Okay, so real fast, if you are concerned about being severely allergic to bees, like deathly allergic, going into anaphylactic shock, then do not be a beekeeper. And signs that you are this allergic to bees are: you're going to have itchy palms of the hands and bottom of the feet. You're going to have difficulty breathing, throat closing up, heart palpitations. You're going to have hives or be itchy in places other than where you were stung. If you experience these symptoms, go to the ER, because you might be deathly allergic to bees and going through anaphylactic shock. And you're going to have to carry an EpiPen with you for the rest of your life everywhere you go. Now, if you just experience swelling, like say your hand puffs up or you have a swollen face and you were stung on the face or on the hand, then it's common to swell up. I used to swell up really bad, so bad that I couldn't even like hold an egg to crack it after I was stung 2 times on my hand. And that is fairly normal, and most people have some kind of small allergy to bee venom. So as a beekeeper, you can suit up with the safety gear to keep the amount of stings you get to a minimum. But what I did, and what I strongly recommend if you're up for it, is to just get used to the bee stings. Now, this is harder if you have only 1 or 2 hives and you live in a place with a winter. So when I started keeping bees in Pennsylvania, just getting stung every once in a while, I did not develop an immunity to bee venom. However, once I came here to Hawaii and started working for a commercial apiary and was getting stung multiple times 4 or 5 days a week, that's when I developed an immunity within a few months. And so this is what happens to most people. Once you start getting stung a good amount of times on a weekly basis for months at a time, your body's going to develop an immunity to the bee venom, and you're not going to get that itchy and swelling. I mean, it still hurts when a bee stings me for a minute or 2, but I don't swell up and it doesn't itch the way that it did when I first started keeping bees. But if you are wearing all that protective gear and you only have a hive or two and you don't get stung often, most likely you're not going to develop an immunity to the bee stings. Now, one important thing to keep in mind is that you can develop a severe allergy to bee stings. Maybe you've been keeping bees for 5 or 10 years and you just swelled up a little bit when you were stung, and then one day throat started closing up and you didn't know what was going on because you're not allergic to bees. Maybe it was something you ate, who knows, but it is possible, and this does happen to some people, that just at some point in their life they develop a severe allergy to getting stung by honeybees and they have to stop keeping bees and start carrying an EpiPen. And it might not have been the case for the first 3, 4, 5 decades of their life, but now it is. So it's something to always keep in mind and be aware of when you're out with the bees, that this could happen at any point. So while we're talking about bees, and if you're still with me here, I wanted to add in a few more fun facts for those people that like to geek out on bee facts and stuff like I do. So for one, not all honeybees sting. The drones do not have a stinger. They cannot sting whatsoever. The queen has a stinger, however it is not barbed. So she can sting anybody and anything and she will not die. However, worker bees die after they sting, and that's because their stinger is barbed. So once they sting, they will try to fly away and that stinger will remain under your skin, and she will later die from the wound of losing that back end of her body. And here's an interesting little bit of information about the worker bee and how their body works. So the worker bee stinger is a modified ovipositor. An ovipositor is an egg-laying organ that transmits the egg from the female to its final place where it grows, which for the honeybees is the cell within the comb. And so you might be wondering, well, so the queen bee can sting me and sting me repeatedly like a wasp. Well, yes, technically, but I've never actually met a beekeeper who was stung by a queen, nor have I ever been stung by a queen bee. The queen uses their stinger to kill other queens. So when the hive makes a new queen, they make a bunch, and if multiple queens hatch, simultaneously they'll battle it out with their stinger, and usually one queen will hatch first and she'll go around and find the other queen cells with the queens that haven't hatched yet and stab them through the cell and kill them before they have a chance to hatch and try to be the reigning queen. Now, I have seen a queen try to sting me, and that's when I worked for a queen breeder. My job was to take the bees, the queen bees, after they mated and started laying, and put them into a queen cage for sale. And the queen cages, if you're familiar with them, they have a small little hole that the queen gets out of. And so when I would put her into the cage, this is when I was first starting out, I didn't really know what I was doing, and no one really showed me much. So I was trying to get her into that tiny little hole, and sometimes, I mean, I kid you not, they would put their legs on either side of the hole to prevent themselves from going inside the hole of the cage. And so I would try to tap on their butt, which is essentially where their stinger is, to get them into the cage, and then they would start to curl up into that C shape and try to sting me. I never actually was stung. I mean, they're kind of slow moving bees when they're already laying eggs. Now, bees don't die if they sting another bee, and that's because bees have an exoskeleton. So their barbed stinger doesn't get stuck under the exoskeleton the way it does when they sting a mammal and it gets stuck under our skin. So they can sting another bee repeatedly. There are also stingless bees, and if you're not familiar with stingless bees, you should go YouTube it now. Stingless bees are mostly known for living in warmer climates. You can find them in Australia. They live in tiny little hives, and they have these teeny little pots that they fill up with honey. It's super interesting, and a bunch of really great YouTube videos about it that I will post in the description notes. Now, you might be thinking that keeping stingless bees sounds like a great idea, but keep in mind that they do bite, so that still hurts. They just can't sting you.